speaking to you, the first thing I wanted to ask you, what is the contrarian way and why contrarian?
That's a good question. There's kind of a long story behind it, so I'll share as much as I can. Um, a few years back, my wife and I were running a fitness studio, and we had just gotten to the point where things kind of started to take off. We figured out who we wanted to work with and who we were probably best equipped to be able to train. And the business started growing, and all of a sudden, we had the pandemic happen. And so we had to shut down our gym, and we ended up not too long after that having our firstborn, our daughter. And it was at that time when I had to go and get a traditional job. I had pretty much always been an entrepreneur before that, but we got a growing family. I got to have some income coming in, so I went and got a traditional job, and I was working supporting this ad agency, and I had worked with them for a while, got really good results for the clients, moved up in, position and more of a leadership role.
Mm.
And there was this one period of time, I can't even remember what year it was, but we were in a meeting and we were talking about this issue that the company kept running into over and over.
Yeah.
And they couldn't get past the cap of 20 clients. They would hit it, maybe go a little bit above, but then they would drop right back down. They couldn't sustain it.
Mm.
And I took a look at things and was able to recognize really one big issue that they had. And it was that they were trying to serve, two masters essentially. They had two different types of clients. They had coaching clients and they had e-commerce clients. And when I looked at the performance, like how did each of those two types of clients perform, which ones got better results, that kind of thing,
Yeah.
and then which clients took more of the resources, I was able it like it was really clear. The consulting and coaching clients got better results and they took less resources. So I said, my first piece of advice is focus solely on them.
You want to scale
Tailor
back.
all your messaging toward them and everything.
Mm.
And the second thing is when you do that, I know that you are going to get more clients. And so you need to have some systems in place for that. Well, they took the first piece of advice. They changed all their messaging, did everything like that, and
Focus just coaches.
within 2 months, they doubled their clients. They went from 20 all the way up to 40. It added
Mm.
around an additional 400,000 in revenue in just those 2 months. But they didn't take that second piece of advice and kind of build the structure that was needed to support that. And so a few months down the road, they started running into some issues. They weren't able to get the results that they promised their clients. That was a big problem. They had employee turnover, so it was putting more stress on everybody else who had to pick up the slack. And they were actually having to give refunds because people were so dissatisfied. And so I did my best to try and support them, pick up the slack, doing essentially three different roles at once. And 2022 comes around. We're probably late June, and I'm on this leadership meeting with them, and they gave me some kind of shocking news for me. They were cutting my role from across the company,
Mm.
and it was probably the worst time that something like that could have happened because we were 2 weeks from having our second born, our little boy, and we were gonna do a home birth. And so I don't know if you have any experience with that, but it's an amazing experience. But when you're having a baby at home, there's lots of things that have to be prepared and done. And so we were in the process of finishing our basement. We were doing like a remodel kind of thing, and we had finances that had to all line up for that.
Yeah.
And not only that, but my mom faced a serious health issue during that same period. My
Mm.
mother-in-law did as well. I was just coming off of some health stuff. And so it's like all of these huge things.
Are hitting at the same time.
Yeah, all of them happening at the same time. And at first I was just so mad, right? Like you're cutting my income before like all these important things and then all the health stuff on top of that. And I didn't know what to do. So I just, I threw my hands up and I'm like, God, I don't know what to do. Just tell me. And in that moment, I heard him say, when everything is big, nothing is big.
Hmm.
So when you've got all these huge things happening around you, in comparison to one another, they don't look that huge. Like I think back to this past August, September time, I took my wife on our 10-year anniversary trip and we went to California and we saw the redwoods, all the big giant trees. And it's amazing when you compare those trees to the little ones that we have here in Wisconsin.
Hmm.
It's just it's like a whole different world. But when you're there and you compare them to each other, you're so small you can never see the top, so you can't actually see how tall these trees are. So when you compare each of them to one another, they're not that big, right? They
Hmm.
don't seem huge when you're used to that, when that's all you see, and that's kind of what it was like in that period of time. And so one of the things that I did as I was trying to figure out, like, what am I supposed to do next with my life? I know I'm an entrepreneur. I had a business during that time. I wasn't doing a ton with it. What do I want to do? I started looking somewhere that I hadn't really looked before, and that was to the Bible. And I was reading the Bible, just learning more about Jesus and his life, and kind of when I looked at the ways that he interacted with people, whether it was a one-on-one conversation like this, or he's speaking to a huge crowd, I noticed that there was a pattern in the way that he communicated with people. And that pattern is what set him apart from all of the other teachers of the time. If you're not familiar with the Bible, during Jesus' time, there were some different groups of religious leaders, and most of them were like power hungry,
Yeah.
and they wanted to shut down Jesus and his message of uh, salvation and peace and faith and all of that. They wanted to maintain power, and so everything that they did, the way that they communicated with people, like they didn't try and make them feel like they belonged, like I'm
Hmm.
part of this, I'm in relationship with you. They were more about exclusivity, like, if you're not part of our club kind of thing. And they didn't really help to grow people's belief at all. They kind of, they didn't help to transform people's lives. They were more like, you're born into this specific, group of people. You're going to stay there for your whole life. You can't grow, you can't transform, you can't become someone new. And
Hmm.
everything that Jesus did was the opposite.
Right.
So for his time, he was very countercultural and he was a contrarian. And so
Hmm.
when I talk about the contrarian way, it's really just kind of this pattern of communication and helping people to have a transformation in the same way that Jesus did, which is countercultural. It's contrarian to the way that we typically do things now. So that's kind of the story that, led me to. I didn't create the contrarian way. It's modeled off of something that I learned,
Hmm.
and it's how I try and live my life when I communicate with people too.
Hmm. In that moment when everything was kind of falling apart from you, you have these issues from work, you have these issues with, I mean, with your family, you're dealing with lots of things at the same time. What was the thing that held you down?
Like the heaviest? What
Yeah.
thing
What
was
was the thing
heaviest?
that, yeah,
Not being able to control it.
right.
I grew up as a perfectionist. I was a straight A student. I got all the right answers. I was an all-star athlete. Um, and a lot of it was for show. Like I was trying to, you know,
Prove something.
prove something,
Yeah.
especially to my parents. One of the things that it's just a funny thing that comes to me is, as I was growing up, I grew up Lutheran. It's like a denomination of Christianity, and one of the things that I had to do was pass this confirmation test. So you study for a couple of years, and you learn a lot about um, the Bible and different concepts and stuff like that, and then you got to take this big test at the end. And on that test, I got 99.5% of the questions right. There was just like a fraction of one that I got wrong.
Mm.
And so just the reason I share that is that's where I built my identity. Like
So
I
not having control was disturbing. Yeah.
Yes, exactly, and when I didn't have control over something, there was a problem, and that was really a period of time that shook me because I couldn't control any of this, right? Health issues, you could be the healthiest person in the world and something could happen to you that's completely out of your control, right? The job thing, losing my job, I was doing everything that probably um, a company that's looking for really high quality employees would be doing, like going above and beyond, all that stuff, and still this happened. And that was the hardest part, and that's kind of why I just threw my hands up and said, "I don't know what to do because I can't do anything to change anything about this whole situation and all these things. So just like give me some guidance here."
Mm. How long did you stay? I'm curious. How long did you stay back home before re-strategizing and deciding, let me start up, let me get back to my entrepreneurial journey?
It was a period of a few months for sure. Because we needed some income, I tried to do a couple things on the side, finding a different ad agency to work out with, and just I mean, you probably know what it's like when you're doing something and you're just like, this isn't right. It's like it's not what I'm called to do. I'm not feeling fulfilled. I'm just, going through the motions, and that's what I felt like for those few months until I started to kind of solidify some of this stuff and spend more time thinking rather than, being out there and consuming other people's content and stuff, just,
Mm.
thinking and being in my own mind.
In that point, what was the starting point for you in business? So when you go and you decide, let me start my own thing, what is the first thing you do? I mean, aside, we know all know the basic things. When somebody wants to start a business, I need to get a logo, I need to build a website, all of that. Those are the basics. But talk to me about the mindset and the systems you're putting in place at that very moment. Let's say I want to start back out there. What's the first step? Do you go out? Okay, do you start pitching to other businesses? Hey, this is what I can do, or are you trying to pitch or build a team as well, or what's that process like?
Yeah, that's a good question. I have a framework that I use now. I didn't have this back then. And I think it's part of the reason why I ran into some of the issues that I did when I was starting my own business. Because I've had a number of different businesses. I was a financial coach for a period of time and I sold that because I just felt
In
out of alignment.
2014, yeah.
Yeah. I did supplement and nutrition coaching. My wife and I had a gym, so we did fitness coaching. So there's like a lot of, I've had coaching in my world for probably about a decade now, a little bit longer than that. And when I was thinking about starting my own business, I was like, okay, well, what am I good at? And who am I good at doing it for? And the first answer that came to me is kind of the one that I took. And it's, well, you're good at running ads and you're good at doing it for coaches because you just, that's what you got fired from, basically. Not fired, but let go. And so I'm like, well, let's do the same thing. That'll be easy. It'll get me some income coming in. And, I started doing that. I didn't actually have much of a website at all. I wasn't doing any advertising. Um, it's kind of a little bit of a blessing in disguise that there was so much blow up from this company that I just left and people unhappy because the relationships that I built with a lot of my clients, even the ones that ended up leaving, were always really strong relationships. And so I ended up working with some clients myself with my business after they had left and after I had left. So I didn't have to do a whole lot with marketing or anything like that. I did set up a formal legal business so I could do things the right way. Um, I didn't just kind of wing it too much. But from there, the other clients that I got were all referrals. I didn't do anything. I didn't run my own ads. I didn't, make a whole bunch of posts organically on my social media. I didn't really do anything like that. It was all kind of word of mouth. And after doing that for a little while, I started to realize
Mm,
what I didn't like about what I was doing. And I felt like a lot of what I was doing was just pushing buttons. And that side of this business of running ads, I was good at it. I got results both in my own business, working with the clients that I had and supporting these other businesses. But the area that I saw I got the best results with them was in the coaching. Like, it was in the mindset stuff. It was when we talked
Mm,
about pricing and offers and who you want to serve and some of those things. And that's kind of where I had my own moment of like, what things are taking up all of my time and resources,
yeah.
and what things are getting the best results for people? Why am I
Mm,
doing this other piece of it that I don't really enjoy, doesn't fulfill me? I could teach somebody how to do that very, very quickly.
mm,
So I shifted into this complete mentor and coaching model rather than like running ads or writing copy for people and all that sort of stuff. So the probably the biggest thing that happened when I made that shift, that's probably a better example of how I started my business. It wasn't right at the start, but once I was like, okay, I know what I like, I know what I don't like, I know what I'm good at and what I'm not good at, and I
mm,
know who can pay for what I'm good at, right? Those are kind of the three things that I look at is, do I enjoy it? Do other people need it?
yeah.
And can they pay for it? And if all those things work, then we're good to go. You got a business, right? Solve a problem for somebody that you enjoy solving it for, and you got a business.
Mm. So when a business owner comes to you or an online entrepreneur and say, having, okay, now I'm signing up and I want you to coach me, what does that process look like? And what do you help them achieve with the process?
That's a great question. I would say that my process is a little bit different. The way that people my come through my world is usually they'll find me on social media somehow. They'll either, be connected with me or send me a friend request, or they'll see some content somewhere. And I've got a lot of short form content that's out there to, really, I'll just share a little bit kind of about what that process looks like. Cause I do the same thing for my own business as I teach clients to do.
Okay,
And it's a three-step process. And these are the three ways that Jesus communicated when he had that conversation with people.
interesting.
The first piece is belong, and it's helping people feel like they belong. Like, I understand you. I am like, we're almost one and the same. Like, we're cut from the same cloth. I know the things that really bug you because I've probably experienced them myself. I
Mhm,
also know a lot about the aspirations and dreams you have because I have some of the same stuff. And you connect with people, you help them feel like they belong, and that's really the first step. So with my clients, I help them figure out, what does that messaging look like
mhm,
to show people that you care, and that you can help them feel known and valued and understood like an actual person, right?
mhm. Yeah.
So that's kind of the first part, because if people don't feel like they belong and they don't feel like you actually care
Able
about
to
them,
connect. Yeah.
yeah, their ears are going to be turned off to what you have to say next. So that's kind of the first part. The second part, that Jesus did, I call it believe. And it's where you start to shift some of those core beliefs that people have that are not serving them very well, right?
Mm,
In any type of area where there's a coach who's trying to teach a skill to somebody so that they can change their life, there's almost always some core beliefs that are off, right? If it's a nutrition coach, you probably got clients who are saying something like, when I make more money and can buy organic food, then I'll start getting healthier. Or when I have more time, then I'll start working out, right? A financial coach, kind of the same thing. When I'm making more income, then I'll start
that's
saving
there.
for retirement,
Mhm,
right? So there's always these false beliefs that people have. And so when you've helped them feel like they belong, and you know them, then their ears are open to hearing some of these other messages where you share, you probably have this belief, but here's why that's not helping you. And then you help them install a true belief, something that can actually serve them. One of the interesting things I did not that long ago was working with some life coaches. I'm sure if you haven't heard of this, I would be very surprised. You know how there's like coaches that tell you to do affirmations and like
yeah,
say
of
stuff to
course.
yourself in the mirror, right? They're
Yeah.
like, yeah,
I
money
believe
flows to me.
today is gonna be a good day.
Yeah, it's going to be a great day. Money flows to me in all ways. Like, I am successful, and like speak in the present as if you have all these things. And For most people, the vast majority of people, those affirmations never work. And there's a reason for that. There's a reason for that. Um, at its core, affirmations like that are lies because you are lying to yourself. So if I'm a coach and I'm trying to start a business and I'm saying these affirmations in the mirror, like money flows to me from all, different directions. Getting clients is really easy. I can make a sale just like that. Whatever affirmations you're saying, you have no proof of those in your life. And so essentially you're lying to yourself. And when you lie to yourself subconsciously, you learn to not trust yourself. And when that happens, your confidence in what you do and what you say decreases. And so one of the things I did was I shared with people how to use affirmations in the correct way. And essentially, the way that you have to do that is you have to have some level of proof. There has to be some level of proof in what you're saying to yourself so that you're being truthful, you believe it, and you trust yourself more. And so essentially, there's two ways that you can do that. The first way is the affirmations that you recite can be true experiences that you've had. So let's say I'm struggling with selling my course or my offer or whatever. Well, one affirmation that I could say to myself is, I might ask, have I ever sold this to anybody else in the past?
Mm.
Right? If that's true, you could say, I've made a sale in the past. I can do it again. Right?
Right.
That's a true affirmation based on your experience. If you haven't sold your program or your course or whatever, your product, have you sold anything else in your life? Have you sold an idea? Like, have you ever told somebody about a really great movie
And the
and
body.
they decided to go see it? Well, you're selling an idea, right? So you could say to yourself, I have sold XYZ thing in the past. I can sell this too, right? Those are true affirmations that still build you up. Um, but let's say you don't have an experience. That's kind of the first area you can go to build an affirmation that's true for you.
Mhm.
The second area is if you can't think of anything yourself, maybe you can listen to a trusted source, somebody that you value what they have to say, you know what they're saying is true, and so you can believe it. So even though I don't have evidence in my life, I have seen it happen for you, or you're speaking this over me, so I know that it's true. And the best place that I go to for that is the Bible. There's
Mhm.
so many verses in the Bible that talk about identity, like who a person is, who they are in Christ, what God calls them to be, like you're a
Yeah.
child of God. Some of those
Health to every sector of life. Of course.
absolutely. And
Mm.
so if you can't come up with an affirmation of your own, use an affirmation from a trusted source like the Bible or from God, right? Everything he says is true. Everything he says about me is true. So I'm going to speak that over my life. And I can be confident in that because I trust him.
Mm.
So when you're talking about shifting beliefs and that being really the second part of kind of how I serve my clients and how I run my business,
Mm.
um, those are some of the things that you look at is what are these false beliefs that people have, and then how can we replace them with something that's not only true, but there's evidence of it, like they can trust it. So that's kind of the second piece, and then the third piece, when Jesus had a conversation with people, he helped them feel like they belong. It opened their ears. He helped them shift some beliefs about themselves, and then he called them to do something. And that's what I call become. He called them to become someone new, like leave your life of sin and sin no more, right?
Mhm.
Or, there's so many
Tells, yeah, tells
examples.
Peter, "I'll make you a fisher of men."
Yes, exactly, exactly. So there's always this transformational piece, this piece of someone becoming someone new. They're not that person now, they want to. And so that's kind of the process of your offer, right? You make an offer to someone to join a coaching program or buy a product, and you talk about that transformation of going from where you're at now to where you want to be, and then actually helping fulfill on that in the end. So that's essentially at a super high level, that's kind of the process that I use in my own business and I
Mhm.
walk my clients through to help them to really be able to connect with people and share just one message, and then to be able to shift those beliefs to a point where someone trusts and knows what they need to do next, and then take that next step to becoming the person that they want to be.
Hmm. You are also going to talk about short form content. You said something about short form content. I wanted to make sure you didn't lose that thought.
Yeah. So part of the way that I connect with people initially is through short form content. A minute or 2 minute Facebook post or something like that, right? Or Instagram, whatever platform you're using, something that's short and a snippet. It can get somebody's attention. And actually, that belong, believe, become process is the exact like I look at it from a macro level in my business. Like, how do I help someone do these three things on the entire client journey? But I also look at it on a micro level, like a post, right? Your
Mhm.
very first line of your post should connect with someone, make them feel like they belong. In the middle of it, you talk about something, you teach something, you shift a belief, right? And then at the very end, you have some sort of call to action that helps them to work towards becoming the person they want to become, whether it's, leave a comment or like it if you agree, or go here to download my thing or watch this video, right? So my short form content, it's kind of it's part of what I call my content habitat. It's just kind of like all of my content that I have out there where people can engage with me. So there's that, but short form can only go so far, right? Especially if you're using written content, people can only connect with you so much through reading it. Like they don't get to know you a ton and like hear your voice and, like we're doing right now.
Mhm.
So that's kind of where the second piece of my content habitat comes in, and that's the long form content, stuff like this, podcast episodes, YouTube videos. It's really just a chance where people can hear you. It's a
Mhm.
different medium, different way
Feed
for
off
them
your
to connect.
energy.
Yeah, they go deeper on different topics, and that's where some of those beliefs are able to be shifted easier because you've got more time with people, right? And if people consume your content, the more time they spend with you, typically the more they're going to trust you,
Mhm.
right? So that's kind of the first part of my essentially my marketing machine.
So if I think about the marketing machine, it goes from kind of like your content on social media, you throw them into like a funnel, and then you're able to kind of do a call close for them.
That's how most people do it. Mine's a little bit different. So I just wrote an email about this not that long ago, and my family and I we went on a road trip to a place called Wall Drug. Well, that's not where we went. We were going to the Badlands in South Dakota. It's just like a really cool scenery, lots of hiking. We went to Colorado as well, and on the way out there, we're on the interstate, and I see this sign, and it says something like, 5-cent coffee at Wall Drug. And so I asked my wife about it. She's like, "Oh, well, when I was younger, we went to Wall Drug. It's, this place where there's lots of cool stuff, whatever." So we continue going down the highway and I see another sign. It's like free water at Wall Drug. A little while later, another sign. Kids love Wall Drug. Like,
Okay.
seriously, as we were driving down the interstate, I probably saw
Well,
hundreds, if not thousands. Yeah, exactly. They're drilling it in. And this email that I sent out, the subject line was "Every sign leads to Wall Drug."
hmm,
So when you think about that in your business, if you're a coach, you probably have like one core offer,
yeah,
one main thing that you sell that's going to make the best transformation for somebody. Well, with your marketing, if you want to have a simple business that's easy to operate, that you can track really well to see if it's working or not, um, there's typically a single client journey that people go down. And so every sign that you're putting out there, whether it's a post or an email or a video or whatever, for me, I always point them to one place. They always go to the same place. My
interesting.
wall drug. It's one single video where if somebody if somebody were to take if they were going to watch or consume any piece of content that I have in my business, anything at all, this would be the one thing I would want them to consume
Hmm,
because it does those three things really well. It connects with them, talks about like who this video is for, who it's not, why it's important, what it's about, that kind of thing. shares a little bit about my story so they get to know me personally and like what I'm about, that I'm a Christian, that I'm a, family man. I love to be outside and hike, that kind of stuff. And then it talks about some of these different beliefs that a lot of coaches have as they're trying to grow their business and stuff like that. And it works to shift some of those. And then lastly, it gives a call to action. It says, if you want to learn more about working with me, here's what to do. And so all of my traffic drives to that. And if somebody decides that they want to work with me, then they send me a DM on Facebook. And I ask if they've watched that video yet, because that's the one most important thing I want everybody to see. And then once they have, I get them info about my offer. It's basically just like a Google Doc or a page that just says, here's everything.
Mm,
And then they can decide to buy or not. So I personally, I've done phone calls before and they work. They work really well. There's also a big downside in that they take up a ton of time.
yep,
And if you're hiring somebody else to do it, they also take up a lot of money too,
yep.
right? You got to pay for that. And so my belief is that if I can communicate essentially the same things, and if I do a good enough job on my marketing to help people understand, like sell me as their coach, like here's who I am. If I'm a good fit for you and you click with me, great. If I can sell my mechanism, which is the process that I use to help people experience that change, that's what the contrarian way is, this belong, believe, become process. And you believe that and that clicks with you. Okay. Then here's my offer. And I list out everything. I believe that people are smart enough. They know more about their situation and their personal circumstances to decide whether or not something is right for them. If you've got
Would you say that that converts better than maybe like the sales course? I'll give you an example because I run a digital marketing club. And right now, one of the things I'm trying to test, I've been doing this for the last 3 years. One of the things I'm trying to test is bringing on a salesperson who would, so once they would go to the funnel is all built nicely, it explains everything, has a video. Usually, I would just let them order. I wouldn't take any sales calls. And sometimes I will have about 30, 50 people, or around, let's say around 30 people per session, which is really great. But right now, I'm trying to test a different strategy. I'm trying to go from you follow on the sales page, you watch a video, which could be 15 minutes or less, and then you book a call, and instead I have a salesperson close. So now that you're talking about this is getting my head spinning already. I'm like, would you say that would you make use of a salesperson, or would you rather just um do the way that you do and you feel that that's way better, it's more convenient, and it still gets the sale?
I think it depends on what type of business you want to build,
All right.
because I've been part of helping eight-figure businesses that have huge phone sales teams grow. I've also been part of helping one-person businesses grow without having any type of sales calls. And both of those models work. But one of the things that I've learned is it's important to, and I think you're doing this right now just by you saying that you're testing out some different things. It's important to be conscious about how you build your business, because a lot of entrepreneurs, they'll kind of follow exactly what they're told, and they'll end up building a business that runs their life
Hmm.
rather
Rather
than
than you
building
running.
their life and having their business fuel that.
Yeah.
So it can work either way, right? You can get great conversions either way, especially if your marketing is strong on the front end. Like if your marketing is really strong on the front end, your sales on the back end will feel more easy. But if your marketing is bad on the front end and you're not connecting with people and shifting those beliefs and positioning your offer well, then you're not gonna, sales is gonna be really hard. The other piece to it too is, and this is different for every person. It's kind of a question you need to ask yourself, is if you are a coach or you're a consultant or like an expert who teaches some sort of skill to somebody, do you love your craft so much that you want to continue practicing it?
Hmm.
Or do you want to shift more into a CEO type of role? Because if you've got a sales team and you've got a bunch of other contractors and stuff that you're working with, at least part of your brain has to shift to the CEO role, because you got to manage those people. right? You
mm,
got to be able to train them on what's my offer, who's my ideal client, and be in communication with them pretty frequently to try and make things better, that kind of thing. If you're doing it all yourself, well, you can and you're doing it in a way that is, mostly automated, that really revolves around creating content and then actually delivering to your clients. Then you're able to spend more of your time practicing the craft versus being the leader. And
yeah.
that's kind of like to each his own, right? You got to ask that question to yourself to figure out what you want.
That gets me thinking a lot. Right. I think we've talked and we've kind of entered some of the questions, some of the things I wanted to be honest, I've just been carried away by the conversation, which is what I always like though, because I feel like when we have these conversations, as curiously as I ask, I figured out the people on the other side, everyone listening just enjoy it that way. I kind of came across your journey, and this is going to be like a two ball question. I know that in your journey, there's a time you sold the business, and then you and your wife started. You said you guys started in nutrition. You started out as a nutrition coach, and then working with as a nutrition coach, working with a network marketing company. And so I wanted to ask you, the first thing is, what did selling, even right up to the point where you sold your business, what did selling your business teach you about just the process itself? Maybe something that that process taught you.
That's a good question. Um, this business that I sold, my financial coaching business,
Okay.
it wasn't.
Financial coaching, right?
Yes, yes. That one, it was not some, big glamorous thing. Like you will hear some coaches talk about like 7 or 8 figure exits or 9 figure exits. It wasn't anything like that. It was much smaller. But it taught me a few really valuable lessons. One, whatever you're building in your business, you've kind of got to make a decision right now. Um, you could decide in the future, but the way that you build it might look different depending on how you answer this question is, do I want to build a business that I can sell? Some people have the desire to build a business and sell it and then go start another business, right? They're kind of like the serial entrepreneurs, right? Other people are like, I just really love my craft. I love doing what I do and helping people. I don't care so much about selling it. Like when I get to 60, 70, 80 years old and I'm like, okay, I'm about done, then the business just it ends, right? So either of those is okay, right? You don't have to leave this giant legacy of selling a business or whatever if you don't want to. For me, when I was building my business, I didn't ever really think about it as something that I wanted to sell, but I knew that I was helping clients and I had this, book of business, these people that I was helping. I was getting paid regularly from them. I had recurring income coming in, and they were people that I cared about. So I didn't want to just, leave and not be able to help them. And
Mhm.
so when I started kind of thinking about getting out of that business and selling it, I had to find somebody, one that I trusted. I'm essentially giving relationships
Your
that I
baby, yeah.
to you. And
Mhm.
I want you to take good care of these people because I care about them. So that was one big thing is, you
Mm,
gotta have relationships and be talking to people and figure out who you trust. That's kind of one thing. The second thing is if you're not tracking different things in your business, if you're not tracking your income, your expenses, all that sort of stuff, it's going to be really hard to make a case for selling it and the value that's put on it. So fortunately, that was something I'm a little bit more of an analytical mind sometimes. Like the creative side of me is part of the reason why I left the financial world is because there's so many laws and regulations and things you can and can't say. So I got out of that. But the logical side of me, kind of the analytical side, kept really good track of everything. And so
mm,
I was able to the buyer, I was able to present like here's kind of what the outcome or what the value of my business is and be able to ask for that.
mm,
And it ended up working out great. And then
mm.
on the back end of that, this is something that I didn't think about initially, but when you're building a business that's based on relationships, whether that's relationships with clients or maybe you've got like vendor relationships, other companies that you work really well with, and you've kind of got um, relationships or partnerships built, there's a transition period that happens, right? The actual sale of the business happens immediately, but there's a transition that happens where you need to pass those relationships. And so
Yeah.
I spent, I think it was probably 6 months transitioning the business and kind of introducing everybody to this new
Different
person.
sectors. Yeah.
Yeah, so those are probably 3 of the biggest lessons is just knowing whether or not you wanna sell it, which I didn't at first, but when I decided to later, that's one question, and then, kinda keeping track of everything so you can know what the value of it actually is, and then, kind of that relationship and transition process and knowing that that's a piece of it too.
There's something that Paul said. Paul said, when I was a child, I taught as a child. And I think that for us in business, well, everybody will have that point of their life, whether it's in your relationship, whether it's your personal life, whether it's in business. And I'm curious, what are some of those things that you held on to, or maybe strategies or an idea that you held on to back in 2014, which, if you look at your journey down the road, like say over a decade in the industry, what's one thing that you held on to that when you look back, you could go like Paul and go, no, I do no longer hold that idea.
It's probably one of the biggest reasons why I decided to sell that business. When I was in that business, one of the things, and actually, I didn't even get rid of this when I left that business. It carried over into the next business I had. But I had this belief that you always need to practice what you preach and model everything for everyone. And in that business, there was a disconnect between me and pretty much all of my clients. And the reason for that disconnect was I had a different mindset than they had. Most of them were employees. They're working for somebody else at some point, hoping to retire and sail off into the sunset, right? For me, I had the mindset of an entrepreneur. I'm about growing a business, getting leads, getting sales, transforming people's lives. I'm not like in it just to, put in my 40 hours and get a paycheck. And so the things that I was recommending to these clients were appropriate for them. They worked for them, they accomplished the goals that they had. But
Mhm.
I wasn't willing to do any of that stuff for myself because especially on the investment side of it, the insurance side, like um I believe in all that stuff. I did it for myself, but from an investment standpoint, I recommend for people to invest in different mutual funds or retirement accounts, that kind of stuff. But for me, I'm like, the way that I'm going to get the biggest return for my investment is not by giving my money to somebody else. It's by
Right.
investing it in myself and my skills to develop me into a better person. So I'm no longer like, Paul, when I was a child, talk like a child, right? I'm trying to become an adult and teach
Yeah.
myself new skills, right? An adult in, whatever area you're in. When we got out of that business and then we moved into the network marketing, like supplement and nutrition business, I kind of still had a little bit of that mindset, like I need to take all these products so that I can tell my story to everybody else so
Mhm.
that they'll maybe want to buy all the products, right? That kind of thing. And we found out real fast, like, one, it's not sustainable. Like, we were spending so much money every month on products that we, for a while were losing money. Like, we weren't making enough versus what we were spending. And I think that's part of the lesson that I had to learn a little bit the hard way is it's okay to share other people's stories. Like, you don't have to be proof of everything. Um, but the other piece that really stood out to me, and this is why, I shifted business models many different times because I'm trying to figure out like what really aligns with me. How do I want to do business? Because in my opinion, the end does not justify the means. What I
Right.
mean by that is the way that you do something, it's not irrelevant as long as you get the outcome, right? There was this coach that I worked with for a while when we had our fitness business. I had looked at him and he had gotten great results for all sorts of different gym owners. I'm like, I want to hire this guy. I think he's going to help us make money, that kind of thing. And so we hired him, we paid him $10,000. And in that, what I found out after enrolling was that, one, I didn't get to work with him directly. I thought I did, but I got delegated to a different coach.
Mm,
And I was kind of frustrated with that. I would have rather worked with him because, like, he's the one on all the marketing stuff, right? I built the relationship with him. I watched all his videos. I want to learn from him. But I didn't get to do that. So that was a little bit frustrating, but I still implemented all of their systems and their processes. And so we paid 10 grand. And in that very first month, we made over 10,000. So we made our money back and then some. But I decided to fire that coach because the way that we made that money was out of alignment with me. Like, I didn't like the business model or kind of the way that they taught us to do things, and I couldn't live out of alignment with myself, continuing to do that, even though I was getting the result I wanted. And so that's what I mean by the end doesn't justify the means. Like, that's why I went through so many different business models. Is I was trying to find something that really clicked, really worked with the way that I wanted to do things and how
mm,
I wanted to be able to help people. So I think that was probably another big lesson that I took from that, financial business and the network marketing side of things.
mm. Down the line, you said you've generated 30 million plus online.
Yeah. Yeah. It's cool. I don't take all the credit for that because one, I hear this thing a lot that, especially in the coaching industry, people say that they're self-made, right? They've got this like big necklace that says self-made, or they're like, I did this and that. I'm like, actually, you didn't do probably any of that, because God gave you the skills. He gave you the abilities to be able to do this stuff. Not only that, but people had to buy from you, right? It's not a one-way street. You didn't just take their money, right? They had to say
Mm,
yes to you, so there's something on them. And then you probably have relationships with other business owners, right? Maybe there was somebody who became an affiliate, or they introduced you to this person that introduced you to that person that made this deal happen. So when people say self-made, I'm like, that's ridiculous. Like,
mm.
have some humility.
Yeah.
Um, I don't remember where I was going with that. Oh, the 30 million plus. So, um, some of that, like, I was helping, like, big businesses. Other parts of it, I was helping smaller businesses. And so, I don't take credit for all of that, right? There's other people that are involved. Like, if I am helping a coach with their strategy, and they decide I want to run some ads, so I'm going to hire this ad agency, right? Well, that ad agency, they're the ones running the ads,
Mm,
right? They're the ones who are maybe writing the copy or creating the creative. So I had a part in that. I'm not the sole person who's responsible for, $30 million of revenue over the past few years,
mm.
but it's trackable. So
Currently, do you work with a team or this is just you?
it's just me.
Wow.
I used to have
You
this.
should really be good at certain systems. Jeez.
Some systems I'm good at. I'm trying to one of the It's I guess it's kind of a system, but it's also kind of a mindset that I made when we had our fitness studio. I created this acronym called SEE, and it
Mhm,
stands for simple, efficient, and effective. And so the way that I initially used that is, we had a team, we had other instructors and people who would clean our gym and stuff like that. And so when we had these team meetings, I would say, as you go forward this week, whatever you see that you can make more simple, efficient, and effective. Whatever you see with your eyes that can become more simple, efficient, and effective, write it down, bring it to the next meeting. And that was a way that we were able to continually improve our processes. And that's what I try and do with my business as well. I used to have when we had our gym, I used to have this. Richard Branson, right?
yeah,
You're from the UK. Who doesn't, right?
yeah.
He's a huge success. I read all of his books, and I'm like, I want to be like him. I want to have these, branded gyms. I want to have restaurants and hotels and, like, do all this cool stuff. And as I got into business, I'm like, that's not me. That is not
Right.
me. Like,
Interesting.
good on him. He knows his personality. He knows what he's really good at, finding other people to lead stuff. He's good at finding leaders. That's,
Yeah.
and doing crazy marketing stuff too. Um, so I
Mm,
realized that wasn't me, and that's okay.
okay.
I would rather at this point in my life, I'm not saying that this will be the same forever, but where I'm at right now, I would rather be on the ground making an impact in people's lives, um, personally, and being able to develop those relationships with people versus leading a huge team doing all sorts of things, right? Like I want to be the creator and the coach. I don't want to be the huge CEO right now. And
Mm.
you can make great money doing either, but they're very different skill sets, they're very different mindsets. I've done both of them, and as of right now, the kind of the creator and the coach side of things is where I want to be.
Right. Right now, I have a team of 4, but if I'm being honest, I never want any a team of 3. If I'm being honest, I never want anything to grow above 10. I
Yeah.
feel like sometimes I get up in the morning and then they'll have to write to me, "What are we doing today?" Then I go, "Oh my God." So I have to even talk to you guys. I even have to talk to you guys, and it's just sometimes too much to put in place. But yes, I agree with you. I wish I could run a business as big as it could be. Just having about a maximum of 10 people, I think for me that's going to be my goal and not hundreds of people.
Yeah, and that's great, right? If that works for you, awesome. And maybe you think that's where you want to go and you get there and you're like, "You know what? I could handle more." Or maybe you get there and you're like, "You know what? I thought I wanted 10. I don't want any."
Yeah.
Or, maybe you just stick with 10 forever, right? It's not like you make a decision and you're stuck in it for the rest of your, journey.
Mm. I want us to talk about something in the last way, we're rounding off about that's the which is the biggest reason why I reached out to you because I felt like we shared something very, very important, the faith. When I saw you make that post, because for me, I've always believed all my journey that, and it's something I always say on most of the podcast, and even in the actions that I take when it comes to me building my personal brand. For example, I've been sending out an email for the last. I have like an email list of about 21,000 now. I've been sending out an email every week for like the last 3 years. And one of the things I do as a routine is, regardless of what's happening, every start of the year, I write an email about finding a spirituality and finding an anchor. And in that piece of email, I'm literally saying about literally whatever the case study is or whatever I'm talking about in that email, I'm saying, hey, there is a level that you can't grow beyond without belonging to somewhere because even the world is going to test you. Right. And that same kind of mindset I bring to other aspects, even with the podcast. Sometimes I would not, I willingly not have some certain kind of guest on the podcast if I think that they were not the kind of values that I wanted. Or is it my marketing agency? So we're helping entrepreneurs with sales funnels and email marketing. Sometimes you have some of these businesses come, for example, I said it to my team, if a cigarette company walks into the door, I'm not taking their money, no matter how much they're giving me, because it doesn't just align with my value. I won't partake in doing that. If a betting company comes for an ad on the podcast, I will not, because I just don't want to partake in that. And I think that I'm saying that to say that I think that that's one of the things I really connected with you when you talked about building a value, building a business the Christian way. So I wanted to dig deep into your mind and just what do you think is that way that we should build businesses as Christians? We might get a bit deeper into it, but what do you think is the right way to build a business as a Christian? We might go a little deeper down the line.
I would say follow Jesus's model.
Mm,
He on the Sermon on the Mount, he talked about many different qualities and characteristics that you want to have as a Christ follower, and implementing those in your personal life is no different than implementing them in your business life.
mm,
Like, I actually I sent out a email. This was a different email that I sent out fairly recently, where I talked about a bunch of things that you shouldn't do in your business. I'll give you just a couple examples that I remember because it was a significant list. But um, some people will use, they'll say like there's X amount of spots available,
mm.
and maybe that's not true. Or they'll put a countdown timer on a page, but you can still buy the offer after the countdown timer ends, right?
Right.
So there's like some of these psychological and persuasion concepts that a lot of marketers will use which they're not bad if they're used correctly, right? Jesus said, I'm coming soon, right? Well, that builds urgency, right?
Mhm.
But it's also, he's not saying like, I'm coming next week on Tuesday at 3 p.m. So
Jesus
put
isn't
your faith in me before then, right? So there's a way that you can use urgency and scarcity in an honest way that, um, is in alignment with your values, right? Sometimes you got to think about out of the box because you're taught so many different things from other people who might not have the same values as you, which is why it's important to consciously build your business and how you want to do things. So I would say that's probably the first element of it. The second piece would be, this contrarian way that I talk about: belong, believe, become. I help coaches and consultants and experts who teach a skill. I help them to grow their business this way. But that can apply to any business, right? Anybody who solves a problem, well, people are going to they're going to have to follow that same process. Like that process of transformation is the exact same process of making a sale.
Mm,
They have to belong and feel like you know them and you understand what they're going through. They have to come into alignment with your beliefs and trust you and know that you know what you're talking about, and that kind of thing. And then they have to have the opportunity to say yes to something.
mm.
um so here's another thing that I'll share. This kind of goes back to our conversation about sales calls, and it also kind of touches with how I build my business. So I was working with a high ticket coaching company once, and I was reviewing some of their sales calls, and I actually joined along on some of their live sales calls to just like look at things with them. There was one call, I don't know that I'll ever forget this. So they positioned it as a 90-minute clarity call or strategy session, like that kind of thing. That call ended up turning in from 90 minutes to 3 hours, and the person left crying. The potential client left crying because there were so many of these little psychological things that play with people's emotions that were built into that sales process that she couldn't handle it. She was not well taken care of. I'm not saying all of the sales calls from this company were like that, but it's almost like you try so hard to persuade somebody to do something that you're now manipulating them versus making an invitation to something, right? Like persuasion's not bad. That's how you help people to change their beliefs. Jesus persuaded people. He made a case for something, but then instead of manipulating them to try and get them to just say yes, um, to say like, oh yeah, I got somebody to say yes, or oh yeah, I got a sale. Um, you're doing it with invitation. You're leaving it open for free will. And that's why I said, I believe that everybody knows their own unique situation better than I do. And so when I'm presenting you with an offer or an invitation to something, I believe that as long as you have all the information, you can make a decision for yourself.
Wouldn't you think that you're leaving more money on the table by not going for a hard sell? What if someone says that?
Yes, absolutely. And I'm okay with that. I'm not a desperate coach who's trying to make every single sale. The other
Right.
thing that I found this with that same company, when you try and persuade somebody and you manipulate them into a yes, most of the time, what ends up happening is they become less than ideal clients. They end up not following the frameworks that you have or the process that you have. They end up taking way more of your time. Lots of times they end up asking for their money back and trying to get a refund. They don't see the results because when you sell somebody into just like those affirmations, when you sell somebody into an idea that they don't believe and aren't ready for, and don't willingly say yes to, but kind of got manipulated into,
Mm.
they're going to be feeling like they were lied to.
It expires. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm okay leaving money on the table. That's totally fine with me. I would rather you know that I'm in this for you, right? It builds the trust. If now's not the right time, that's great. I don't want you to make a decision that's going to make you more stressed out because you're like constantly worrying about finances. I'd rather have you get to a place where maybe this never happens, that you're at a time where it makes sense to work with me. That's
mm,
okay. I've got tons of free stuff that'll maybe help you along, right?
mm,
But maybe because I allowed you to use your free will and and I empower you to make a decision for yourself,
mm,
maybe down the road you'll come back. Maybe it's
mm.
not lost sales, right? I've even seen it happen where somebody decides not to work with you, but their experience with you was so good that they refer other people who they know would be a better fit for you.
I've had that, yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's, at least that's the way that I want to
Mm.
approach things.
Which is the way that Jesus operates. I mean, he heals the 10 lepers and then he lets them on their free will, and you come and say thank you when you want. And
Yeah.
it's just, he doesn't have to push you to do the thing, and he leaves you with the word, or even just he throwing us into the world, and he gives you the choice to choose between good and bad. So I see a lot of men. Let's talk about the second side of it.
Can I share one other thing before you
Yeah,
jump to that?
please.
So I'm not an expert on the Bible. I'm not a theologian. I just read it and try and apply it to my life. And when what you said about the free will thing, one of the stories that I go back to, and that's why even if I've done sales calls in the past, and I'm not the pressure guy, right? I'm not gonna go through all these 10 steps to try and persuade you to say yes. I want
Mm,
you to make an informed decision and feel empowered to say yes or no.
mm,
Um, One of the best examples of that in the Bible that I can think of is the story with the rich man, right? The rich man came to Jesus and he's like, "Teacher, what do I need to do to follow you?"
yeah.
And Jesus said, "Go sell everything that you have and
Give
then
it.
come and follow me,"
Mm.
right? What did the man do? You remember?
He went and sold.
Yeah, he left. Right? He didn't sell his things. He went away sad because of what Jesus said. I don't remember exactly where the story was. Maybe you could pull it up, but he went away sad. What did Jesus do? He didn't go follow him. He didn't go track him down and say, "Oh, wait. I'll give you this extra bonus of like you
Right.
go to heaven
Okay.
plus you get this cool thing,"
I
right?
see. Mhm.
He gave him the free will to make that decision. And sometimes people are going to hear your message, they're going to hear your offer. It's going to be exactly what they want, but the cost of it is too much for them, right? Maybe it's financially, maybe it's energy, maybe it's the amount of time they have to commit to it. If you're not honest about those things up front, you're going to end up with an unhappy customer, right?
Mm,
But if you put all that out there and let them make a decision, whether it's yes or no, I try and detach myself as much as possible from the result. The
mm,
only thing that I can do is control my action, control what I do.
mm,
So if I make a post or if I make another video or I send an email or I make another offer, that's all I can control is me doing that thing. I can't control what happens because of it. I can't control that the rich man walks away sad because the only way for him to get into heaven is to get
yeah.
rid of all of his stuff and to give his life to Jesus and follow him.
Mm,
So that's kind of what I try and do when I'm looking at like how should we run a business as a Christian is just, read the Bible first. Read the Bible,
mm,
improve your own life, but learn some of the things that Jesus said, learn some of the things that God said, even in the Old Testament stuff, right? You can take that, and depending on what lens you're looking at the Bible through, you might look at it through a personal lens one day. You might go back to the same verses the next day and look at it through a business lens and walk away with something that you can feel great about applying to your business. And that's how you build a business that you love.
mm. This has been very, very eye-opening. And by the way, I was going to put a countdown timer in one of my funnels. I'm taking that out.
Well, okay, so here's the thing. I'll make a caveat for you. If it's true,
Yeah.
you can do it, right? If you're doing a live event for something and it's happening, I'm going to
Yeah,
say
I
next
would.
Tuesday at
But
3, right?
the page I wanted to put it on was going to be a page where, we know how to do the technique, yeah? It was
Yeah,
going to be a page where once the countdown ends, it's going to redirect them to another page.
sure.
However, if they leave the funnel and get back, they'll still the countdown restarts. right?
Yep.
So but yeah, just what you said, I was like, no, I don't have to put that. Let me, and I was really thinking of testing it out.
Yeah.
I was just like, no, so I will not add that.
It might work, but what will it do to your integrity if you find somebody
Yeah,
who does that, right? It's
right.
not gonna feel good. Like, you know
Yeah.
what you should do. It's not worth the extra
I'd never
sales
thought
effort.
about it from that perspective. If it was saying, hey, you want 25 people and 25 people get in, yes, I would say that and I keep to my word. But from the perspective of the countdown time, I was just like, all right, yeah. I've never thought about it that way.
Yeah, yeah. So, it's one of those things where you gotta just think about it, make some conscious decisions as you're building your business, um, and that's kinda how I do it.
Hmm. The last set of questions are going to be literally 10 seconds questions just to get your general idea on this. So I'm going to ask you about three, four questions. What is one truth about the online coaching world that no one wants to say out loud, which you might as well want to say? 10 seconds.
A truth about the coaching world
Mm,
that nobody wants to say out loud. Oh, this one, yeah, I want this to be something that I think there's a lot of them. Um, hmm, you got me with that one.
mm,
I could say coaching building your own coaching business is hard,
mm,
and there are things that can make it easier, but there's not really a way that you can bypass the trial and error part of it, right?
right.
Because I there's lots of different coaches out there. I'm not the right coach for everybody, which is great. My message is going to hit home with some people and it's going to hit really deep. And those are my people. Awesome. Other people, I don't really like that Kevin guy. That's fine. Somebody else could share the exact same message as I do, but because it comes from them, they might hear it and resonate.
Mm,
One of the one of the problems though is there are so many strategies out there on how to build a business.
mm.
Almost all of them work. Who's gonna tell you that? Almost all of them work.
And all of them are not for you.
Right, all of them are not for you. Most coaches are gonna say, my way works." Like, "This is how you do it, this is how you build a business, come buy my program and I'll teach you how to do it." Right? Which, I mean, I get it. I get why you would do that, but it's not the truth because there are all sorts of coaches who are doing completely different strategies, seeing huge success. So you got to kind of test, you got to figure out what works for you. Sometimes that costs a little bit of money to figure that out.
Mm,
Sometimes it costs a little bit of time. Sometimes it costs energy to
yeah.
figure it out.
Mm,
And that's part of being an entrepreneur. You've probably seen those like short clips on social media, like how many businesses did you have before you finally hit it big? And they're like five, six, whatever, right?
mm,
I thought for the longest time that my journey of entrepreneurship made me unworthy of success because what most people put out there is their one big success and that's what they talk about. There's not a lot of people who share that whole journey and all the ups and downs and the failures and stuff, and that's why I put that on my Facebook page. That's like my first post is, "Here's my journey. I sold my financial advising business because it wasn't a good fit. I, left the network marketing company because we didn't align on our values. Our fitness studio died because COVID happened." Like, those are real things, and a lot of times you learn more from the failures than you do from the successes. So if you're looking for a coach, like, you want somebody who's going to talk about their failures too, because that's going to help you learn quicker. It's not going
mm,
to eliminate the need for you to have these experiences yourself and figure stuff out, but that's an expectation that you need to have is there's going to be failures, but if you look at them as feedback and as learning, then you just keep going. It's all part of the process. It's part of that refinement.
mm. Wow.
Sorry, that
That's
was more
big.
than 10 seconds.
um, when you look back, when your kids look back one day, what do you hope they say about you?
He loved Jesus.
Hmm.
That's it. That's all I care about, and that he loved us. Doesn't matter how much money I make, what type of house we have, what type of car we drive. I just want them to know that I love them and I love Jesus and Jesus loves them because, there's going to be a point where all of us are on our deathbed. And at that time, are we going to care about our car or our house? We're going to care about how much money is in the bank. We're going to leave the same way that we came. You know, you're made from dust and to dust you're going to return. Eternity is the most important piece. Like things can be hard while we're here, and they will be hard. The Bible
Mm.
tells us that.
They will come.
Yeah,
Trials
that's
and tribulations will come. Yeah.
yeah.
And I
But
always tell people, I always say to people, because sometimes we have these conversations just to chip in something. And Christians think that because you're a Christian, it means you will not have the problems. And I say to them, actually, the fact that you're Christians means you're a Christian means that you will have the problems, because the one thing that Jesus promised us was that the trials and the tribulations will come. But what's the difference between you and the person out there is that you have this safe force that you run back to, and you have this ability to deal with these troubles. And just like Jesus was calm in the storm, if you are not calm, then you would not calm the storm. So being a Christian does not mean that it takes away all the problems, but it means that it just provides you with special kind of ammunition to battle these troubles. And
yeah,
that's when you're battling it with some real peace within, because you understand that you're battling with a higher power. If the man out there faces the world by themselves, but I am facing the world and I think to myself, okay, I'm not just facing this alone. I have a big force behind me. And that's kind of the difference. Yeah.
yeah. You just gave me some additional perspective that I want to share.
Mm.
Remember when I shared my story in that time where all the big things were happening and I felt like God said, when everything is big, nothing is big?
Mhm.
And what I initially thought, oh man, up until you said that, what I initially thought was when all of these storms are happening in your life and you got all these big things happening, if you compare them to one another, none of them look that big, just like the trees, right? And I thought that going through a situation like that increased my threshold for stress. Like I can handle more because I've been through a time where everything was big. But you changed my mind. What you said about God being our hope when everything is big in your life, nothing is big for Him.
Mm.
Bring that stuff to Him because He is our hope and our salvation.
Yeah.
Ah, thank you so much for that. That just like gave me a
Mm.
whole different perspective on that season of life. And it focused the attention where it should have been, not on me and my increase in ability to handle hard stuff, but his ability to handle hard stuff. I mean, the Bible says, you know, my burden is light. Like
Yeah.
give me your
Yeah.
yoke.
Take my yoke
My
and
yoke
learn
is
of me.
yeah. So thank you.
Appreciate you for saying that. This is ending, I mean, way better than I thought. The last question, is it the last? Yeah. Very funny question, but I've got to ask though. If God asked you to walk away from all that you have today, would you?
Absolutely. I would for sure. The hardest things to walk away from would be wife and kids, right?
Of
The
course, when I ask you
relationships.
to walk away from that, yeah.
Yeah. I would. If that's what he asked me to do, I would do it because I trust in him. I believe that the plans that he have, I think it's in Jeremiah, the plans that the Lord has for you are good, right?
Mm.
They're meant to prosper you and not to harm you. So if he said that to me, I would trust him. They're, as far as, like, the tangible stuff that we have, I'm gonna this will add a little bit of time, but I'm gonna share another story with you. Um, my wife and I had our first 2 kids, and they were home births, and both of them were really hard on my wife physically.
Mm,
And so we had decided that we didn't wanna have more kids. It was just so hard on her. I didn't wanna see her have to go through that. She didn't wanna have to go through it.
mm,
6 months after we had our second born and we thought we were done, God, spoke to my wife while she was rocking our baby at night, and he said, "I want you to adopt twins." And when my wife told me that, I said, "You are nuts. No way. We just got done having this conversation. We
yeah,
agreed we're not gonna have more kids." She's like,
you're
"Hey."
saying let's adopt it.
Yeah, and she's like, "Hey, this is what he said, right? It's not
Mm,
me. This is what he said." So we had many conversations, and I ended up going to a prayer night at our church one night, and that night, I got confirmation that that's what he wants us to do.
mm,
So we hadn't prepared financially, we hadn't prepared anything. We're, like, done with having kids. We got rid of all the, the baby clothes and stuff, and so we stepped out into this adoption process, and I had all sorts of beliefs about what adoption was and what it wasn't, and like what the birth families are all like and stuff like that. Um, I was scared because I didn't know how we were going to pay for it. We were told that, you're adopting twins, you should probably have $90,000 that's just sitting there that you can have immediately. Well, we didn't plan for that.
mm,
Um, and fast forward through a lot, it took about 2 years. Um, we got matched with a birth mother who was going to have twins, and the situation was completely the opposite of everything that I thought adoption was. Like, all those beliefs I had broken just like that. And it was about 6 months ago we brought those babies home. God fulfilled that promise. And during the last 6 months, this will all come full circle. During the last 6 months, um we're loving on these babies, we're growing together as a family of 6 now, all that kind of stuff. And we had been through some challenging issues with some of our neighbors. What ended up happening was, one night I had gotten our daughter to bed, I had gotten the twins to sleep, and our oldest son wanted my wife to rock him to bed, so she's rocking him to bed, I'm sitting in our kitchen. All of a sudden, our whole kitchen lights up bright orange, and I'm like, "Oh, no." I look out the window, and our neighbor's house is on fire, just blazing, the whole thing, just huge flames. I start screaming, I run upstairs, I'm like, yelling to my wife, "Get the
get
kids
the kids
out."
as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so we got all the kids out so fast. We left everything behind and, went across the street to our neighbor's house and just watched it burn. For 3 hours, we watched that house burn.
Jesus Christ.
And for fortunately, we didn't end up experiencing a ton of damage with our property, but we were put out of our house for 3 weeks.
Mm,
And so we were staying at friends' houses, we were in a hotel for, like, 2 weeks, and we didn't have any of our stuff. And during that time, like, it was hard, right? You got 4 little kids and 2 adults in this,
you have to
in
help.
this
Yeah.
hotel room. Yeah, all the shifting and stuff like that that happens with the kids and them not being able to have a routine and stuff, it was hard. But I was talking to my wife, and one of the things that we really realized during that time is we don't need really anything. Like a roof over your head, clothes on your back,
Grateful.
food. Yeah. And so when you ask that question, like if God asked you to give it all up, would you? My answer is yes. Um, one, because I trust him, but two, also because we kind of had to live through that,
Mm,
fairly recently. And that's what I come back to is, because we have hope, we can get through anything,
mm,
you know.
mm. Wow. Yeah, that's been last question. I'm sure this one will take us just 1 minute. And we've asked all the guests on this podcast this particular question. When all is said and done, how do you want to be remembered as Kevin?
I don't really care. I don't really care. Um,
So,
because everybody gets forgotten,
yeah.
right? Like it might be fresh for a generation, maybe two, but after three, four, five, nobody's gonna remember. What matters that they remember is Jesus.
Right.
I kind of like I said earlier, I don't have a big legacy that I feel like I need to leave. Um, I think it would be great to leave a legacy of faith, right? Like you look at your family, your kids and your grandkids and your great grandkids and all the way down the line, maybe because you or your parents made a decision to follow Christ, that changed the trajectory of your family for generations, right? That would be awesome. I would love that. But I don't want that to be about me. And it's not about me because the person who shared Jesus with me, like it's not about them, right? I didn't just decide to put my faith in Jesus. Like it's kind of like that self-made thing. I'm not self-saved. He hunted me down, right?
Mm-hmm.
So none of that credit comes back to me anyways. It comes back to him. So I don't really care a whole lot, what I'm remembered as, because I know where I'm gonna end up after everything's said and done.
Wow. Kevin, I want to thank you very much. I know that your time is very valuable and I understand that you have poured out a lot to us. And I really want to thank you very much for sharing from your wealth of experience and just sharing yourself, just sharing your faith, sharing your things with us. I'm sure for those listening to this, they'll get a ton out of it. So thank you so much for doing this. I really do appreciate it.
I appreciate you, Ari. This has been a cool chance for us to connect, and I appreciate the newfound perspective that you gave me.